A lot of the people nowadays is like their first generation that they're going to hire a financial advisor or talk to a financial advisor because in the past, mom and dad had just had a pension and social security and they had some savings, they didn't have that. It is way easier to financially plan than it is to financially clean up the mess. The thing that I want to highlight is you're better off starting the conversation early and just saying, hey, is this a point where I need help? Have a quick conversation, have a consultation. And it's really easy to determine sometimes like, yes, I'm going to need some help, but maybe not yet.
Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Encompass More Asset Management LLC is a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ducharme Wealth Management Podcast. Today I'm joined by my counterpart here in St. George, Carissa Bertrand. She's an accredited wealth management advisor here with me in St. George and has, such complementary attributes to myself. She's patient, kind, communicates well, is thorough in her follow-up work. She keeps me grounded in a lot of stuff.
I don't know what I did to deserve all of this from you today, Brandon. Thank you.
Okay, we're talking today about the some of the primary reasons that we see people come in and talk to us, and some of the questions that they're working through in their head, and why they're starting to engage us. Right. So we're trying to give some insight today to our listeners on like when do you engage a financial advisor? When do you engage a financial planner? What are those driving events and what kind of things are they there to help you accomplish, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of times there's this thought around meeting with a financial advisor that I've never done that. It's scary. Like it's probably not for me. I don't know if I qualify. I don't know, what this is going to be like. So I just don't. Yeah. Right. And so I think it'll be helpful for people to understand what a lot of these common things are that does bring people through the door so that maybe they can recognize like, oh, I didn't realize like I could get help with that. Or I didn't realize, that's been on the back of my mind.
Well, historically, financial advice, true like advice, not, you could always throughout time go and find a salesman that would, give you some, guidance. Yeah. Kind of in an effort to sell whatever they were selling. Right. But if you look at like my grandfather, he didn't have a financial advisor till he ended up hiring my dad later in life. And, like that older generation, like until the, more recent years, and I would say like it really kind of started to shift in the like mid 2000s. Advice was not accessible to most people, right? Yeah. You had like RIAs or registered investment advisory firms have been around for decades and decades and decades, going back to, early 1900s. But that service was pretty much reserved for ultra high net worth people. And then in the 90s, you started to see a shift where there was some more accessibility to just high net worth people, right? Like there's a great firm in town here in St. George with us, Soltis, and they started in the early 90s. And I had the opportunity to be mentored in one of my college classes by the president of that firm. And they had built it on a vision of doing financial advice and not being what's called a broker-dealer, a broker where they were selling products, but they were just getting paid for their advice and guidance and help. And that was really revolutionary at the time. But again, it was because of sort of the business model, the depth, the time it takes, all that stuff. It was reserved for people that had more money. I mean, not truly reserved, but just the economics of it didn't work if you didn't have a lot. And what we've seen is the conversation that I try to remind people of always is that technology is deflationary. And so technology has helped assist us in providing advice and guidance down to what I would call like realistically is the mass affluent. And that for anyone listening is like industry speak for pretty regular people,
Your average Joe.
Yeah. And so now there's a lot of people out there that are weighing out when do I go talk to somebody? Because they don't have that guidance from their parents, right? Like a lot of the people nowadays is like their first generation that they're going to hire a financial advisor or talk to a financial advisor, because in the past, mom and dad had just had a pension and Social Security and they had some savings, they didn't have that. Or they had an insurance salesman that had sold them an annuity and kind of gave them maybe some guidance through that, but it wasn't really that true advisory relationship. Yeah. And so a lot of times people think, well, when do I go to talk to somebody like that?
And it feels kind of intimidating to a lot of people to come in and like spill your guts with your finances, because a lot of people don't like to talk about that too. So there's also that side of things.
Yeah, that's true. And I think there's just a lot of unknown, right? Yeah. It's like, what do financial advisors really do? Mm-hmm. And am I going to have to pay them? Like, yes. The short answer is yes. If you want some,
if you want a good advisor
and some good advice, you are probably going to have to pay them. But what I wanted to spell really quick is most good advisors will do a consultation, right? Not all of them. Some people, everyone has the right to run their business their way. I know for us at Ducharme Wealth Management, we have always been big believers in kind of the initial consultation being, no cost to people. And that's just, hey, it's a discovery meeting to see if what you have going on is something that we can help with, right? Yeah. And what I find, particularly in our community here in St. George, like there's a lot of people that reach out to me, and I'm so grateful that they do. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, I don't engage them as an ongoing advisor because what we learn in talking with them is they don't need an advisor right now. They had a quick little easy question. I was able to just give them some quick advice, get them kind of going in the right direction, and they'll be more ready at a later date, right? Yeah. And I'm not one that believes in kind of charging people for that. I think they're just, I'll bank the karma points, so to speak. But I'm glad that they're willing to call. And so what I wanted to do today is like, let's run through a couple of things that like people call about and start like, what is going on where they should be, if this is stuff you're dealing with, you should be considering giving us or another trusted advisor a call. And, if you're stumbling upon this podcast and you're going, hey, you guys have some really good points, but I don't like the sound of Brandon's voice, can't stand the guy. That's okay. I'm not for everyone. We will still help you get pointed in the right direction. There's some other great firms and great advisors in town. Mm-hmm. There's a relatively easy way to vet them. And I've got great relationships with people across the industry and nationwide. So, even if we're not the right fit for you, sometimes we just identify that there's other firms that do things different, whether it's they got a niche or work in a certain demographic or geographical constraints or whatever. And we refer people out too. Yeah. So, we always want to make sure that we're a good fit. Okay. Why don't you kick us off, Carissa? What's the biggest thing on your mind or thing that you realize people are reaching out to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday. I actually had somebody ask me like, why would someone come in and initially start to meet with you? She's like, I get why people should meet with you, but why do people actually get themselves there and through the door to start that meeting? And so I was really thinking about that. And I've actually had quite a few people reaching out recently for different life events. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a big one, whether that is recently married, it could be a first, second, third, whatever marriage. Yeah. But that changes finances. Divorce, that's a big one. It really changes your finances. You've got to consider different things. How do you split the assets? Where do they go? What should I do with them? All sorts of things like that. Death, that's another one. Yeah. Maybe there's some inheritances. Maybe you're going through probate, a house or whatever it might be, whatever the assets are. There's going to be a lot of questions that people have around those different types of life events. So I think that's probably one of the top things that I see and get questions about for people coming through the door.
I think one of the more interesting ones is divorce, which I'll say, you always hate to see a family break up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the right thing, and I'm not here to weigh in on that. I just want to make it clear, like we're not advocates of, divorce so that we can get clients or something like that. Definitely not. But divorce is a really interesting one where we will see people actually come in sometimes that think they might be in a position where they're going to end up in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come in actually not with their spouse, and they kind of will share that, and they'll say, but I don't, I don't understand what's going on. And, and I don't know what's going on with our finances, and I've never had to deal with that. And so it ends up becoming sometimes either a multi-month or multi-year process where we help connect them to some different resources. Like we've got a great relationship with a divorce advocate. I kind of describe her for anyone that has had kids. Like my wife and I, we had a great experience working with a doula. I kind of explain Rhonda, who I filmed the podcast with previously. She's worked with my dad for decades now. She's kind of like a doula for divorce almost, right?
Yeah, she's great.
Advocate to, help people put it together. And so we help connect them with resources and kind of prepare for that life event, help guide them through the whole process. So sometimes it's like you reach out and it's, a consultation and then maybe a couple touch here and there, just kind of, again, maybe that quick, easy question type stuff. And it might be a couple years, a year or two before they're technically a client in all regard. Right. But that's, just the way the world works. And our world is sometimes you end up engaging with people in conversation like years before it's sort of official, right? Before you, as the kids would say back when I was in college, DTR, define that relationship. And that's okay. Like the thing that I want to highlight is you're better off starting the conversation early and just saying, hey, is this a point where I need help?
Yep.
Have a quick conversation, have a consultation. And it's really easy to determine sometimes like, okay, yes, I'm going to need some help, but maybe not yet. Maybe I need a different resource right now first, or maybe I just need a little bit of something, or I need to engage on a one-time project.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people, what I hear is, I wish I would have come in sooner, but I thought I had to have everything together first. Or like I was trying to figure out all of these different moving pieces on my own first before I came to you, or, before I met with someone. And I would highly recommend that people don't wait until they have everything perfect or everything set up before you meet with a professional, because that's really what the professional is there to help you with, and to think of things before, because that's when we can actually make a big difference, make changes. Because afterwards, if you come to us and just say, here, now what do I do? It limits our scope of availability of what we can do in a lot of instances.
Look, it is way easier to financially plan than it is to financially clean up the mess. Right. And finances,
and it's not that we can't.
It's easier when you do the planning on the front side. And so sometimes I'll get, I can sense people are like, well, we didn't want to bother you yet.
Yeah.
And I have seen where that sentiment about people cause them to just like try to start doing some things on their own to try to like get ready to come in and meet. And it's costed tens of thousands of dollars in
their
taxes.
Mind, they're not wanting to put that cart before the horse, but really it's just.
But realistically, like it's easier if we have just an initial consultation and then can start guiding people through the process. And, in our business, we tend to look for stuff that's 10, 15, 20, 30-year relationships. And so when that process is, that first year maybe is, a couple, short consultations and kind of getting a couple things organized here or there, it's no big deal to us, right?
Yeah.
We'd rather have it done right and enable people for the best chance of success, right?
Yeah,
make those meaningful differences. I think that brings it, like, let's jump down to the one where it's just the general, like, organization, consolidation. Hey, I've got like a bunch of old 401ks. I've got stuff all over the place. I'm just like,
I've got an IRA, I've got,
and usually it's like a feeling. It's like, I feel like I'm doing kind of well. Like, I feel like I'm making good money. I feel like I'm making, like, I should be making some kind of progress.
But I just don't really know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know where to go from here. Or I don't know if I'm doing the best things.
Yeah.
Like, can you guide me? Can you help organize me? Like, just get me pointed in the right direction it's kind of like that clarity piece.
Yeah.
I think that we provide for a lot of people is creating that roadmap or that financial plan and helping them recognize, okay, yes, you have this here, here, and here, but what are they actually doing for you? And like, what is the purpose behind these different accounts? What is that money going to actually help you accomplish, right? And I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about that. I think they think about the dollars or the amount, but the amount doesn't matter if you don't know what you're using the money for, if you don't have a purpose or a goal or design in mind.
Yeah, dollars need jobs.
Yeah. So I think that helps a lot of people. And that's a really common one that we see. Even if somebody comes in for something different, a lot of times we have to go through this part as well.
You got to take it back to the organization phase usually. Yeah. There's a lot of power in organization, and, that can give people a lot of peace of mind where they go like, oh, I didn't realize I've put it on paper for people that they have a multi-million-dollar net worth and like, oh, we had no idea.
Yeah.
Cause things were just spread out. They hadn't really valued stuff. They kind of hadn't taken the time. So they just kind of knew they were doing all right. I'm like, no, you're doing fairly well. You're better off than you thought. And from there you can start saying, so look, now that we have it organized, we can start looking for the gaps, and, patch everything up and kind of get stuff fine tuned and work on the details. Right.
Yeah.
But we don't need people to be organized to come in.
No,
we need people to be willing to pick up the phone and say, hey, I don't know what's going on and I could use some guidance. And that's where we love to pick up the conversation and say, okay, let's start off by helping you get organized. Build out that net worth statement, understand where all your insurances are at, understand what, benefits you have available to you at your employer.
Yeah.
Are you missing any major things that's causing you to pay extra taxes? Then, you need to, right? Like just the big things, and get it organized down and say like, look, here's our big areas of opportunity.
Yep.
And that's where we go start doing some work first.
It's pretty exciting. That's my favorite part, honestly.
Yes. I like tax savings. Tax frustrations is another one. Sometimes people come in because they're just like, I feel like I'm paying a lot in taxes. What is going on? And for some people, the unfortunate answer is, yeah, you're doing fairly well and you just got to pay taxes. Anyone that knows us knows we are really opposed to tax evasion.
No tax fraud here.
But that being said, we're also big proponents of making tax-wise choices, right? And trying to support people's CPAs in their efforts to do really great tax filing work. And so we like to just try to observe opportunities and suggest ideas to be considered that might enhance tax savings, strategically, pushing off gains or losses, realizing, in a more timely manner or a more timed manner, when you want those taxes to occur and the benefits that might come with that, right?
An example of that as well, just real quick, is I was actually just meeting with a lady yesterday, and one of the impacts from her taxes is the Medicare, the IRMA penalties. And if we could, she was $265 over the limit to where IRMA kicked in and started throwing off those penalties on her Medicare. So it's like an extra $90-something a month for her now for the entire year. So so now we know that because we did the tax review and analysis, and so we can start working and do some planning so that we can try and keep her total modified adjusted income at $106,000 or less, right? Instead of just being a couple $100 over, we can watch that a little bit more closely and see what we can do to help adjust her taxes to save her over $90 a month. So even just like small little changes. So doing, qualified charitable distributions with her RMDs, instead of paying her, the charity directly. There's different things like that we can do. So,
and here's the thing is like, that's something is like, that is such a tight margin of error, right? That if you do the planning right, you win like $265. You could have been like, hey, in your rental, upgrade the appliances this year.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so you have an expense, have a handyman go through the house and do some repairs at the end of the year, just do some of that deferred maintenance stuff. because it'll push the income down on the rental, which flows through to the 1040.
Yeah.
And that, washes out that 265. So you're a little bit under. And then that saves you, as an expense you were going to have to pay eventually, right? It's kind of the idea. So you're not just, wasting money. But $90 a month, that's $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so, it's like you could have made, and that's money that's just gone, right? Like that's not $1,000. That's like
it's
getting
not
put in
going
an
back
account
into
for
your
you somewhere. It's going,
property
it is going into
anything.
account somewhere. It's going into the IRS account.
Yeah.
And then it gets from there. I can only assume, like burned or whatever. I don't know.
But the point is that there's a lot of little tweaks that we can make that can make a big difference overall. So,
but like the really important thing is that kind of planning where you can make some really great, what I call a tax alpha in that scenario. It requires the client to want to be engaged, right?
Yes.
Like you have to want to engage. You have to want to say, I'll take my time to send the documents needed and do the work, right? It's a symbiotic relationship here, right?
We can only need that interaction with you to be able to help you.
Yeah. It help us help you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Anyways, I am going to probably get on a soapbox here on the next one quite a bit. Because it's been so freaking disastrous for so many people in our community.
Yeah.
And that is life insurance, right? And I'm going to, like tag onto that annuities as well. But life insurance in particular, there is a number of multi-level marketing companies around St. George, which nothing wrong. I'm not, not hating on the business model. It's a business model. In financial services, though, what tends to happen is they have a sales pitch they're trained to give, and they go out and try to sell this to everyone. And here's the thing. We get paid for advice. We have a fiduciary obligation, right? You and I both carry insurance licenses. We understand life insurance. We can get life insurance for our clients when they need it and when it's appropriate. But other people don't have that same responsibility if you just have the life insurance license. And so what we end up seeing, and this doesn't apply to every life insurance agent out there. There's some that are wonderful. There's some that are here that I actually refer stuff to, right? There's some really great experts in our community as well. And I want to highlight that. But when you get the people that really don't understand what they're doing, they've really read a brochure, or have gotten the training from the insurance company, whatever it might be, there ends up being some really disastrous recommendations. Again, because it falls under suitability, and I have observed stuff that is not even suitable. I think it's patently probably illegal. But let's talk about, like, I would say two of the biggest ones. Okay. If people are talking to you about life insurance, like the red flags to be looking for that have led a lot of people to fortunately pick up the phone, give one of us a call at the firm and say, somebody's talking to you about this. Like, have you ever heard of this before? Or, am I doing the right thing? And it's, a life, if you hear like life insurance retirement plan, or they're saying like, oh, it's like opening a trust fund for your kid, or something like that. And then the next one is if somebody recommends that you roll over a 401k, like cash out your 401k or cash out your IRA because you have to get it into like tax-free life insurance or something like along those lines.
Those are
I could
huge
go,
red flags.
hey, listen, any insurance agent out there that's listening to this, that's in my community, that's pitching this, you are absolutely 100% invited to come on this podcast and have a conversation with me and absolutely try to convince me what you're doing is right or even makes sense in almost any scenario. What I find is it doesn't make sense for almost anyone. And I have
like
yet to see a scenario. It's likely less than that. So here's the thing. Their overall framework has potentially some merit, but the details is really where it matters. So life insurance, people coming in for second opinions on that. I'll save you a phone call. If you don't need life insurance to cover your death, you don't need any kind of life insurance, right? You don't need a life insurance retirement plan, most likely, right? If you do need life insurance, you probably most likely need most of it to be term life insurance, where you can get a large death benefit to cover your needs, right? If something happens to you and you need to leave money for your family. And the premiums on that is relatively inexpensive. People overlook it, or people will sell against it or whatever. They say, because, you pay these premiums over years and then you never get a benefit back. And it's like, well, the benefit was you had coverage along the way, and it falls off at a point in life where you intend to not need it anymore. Right. Most people aren't going to need life insurance coverage in a meaningful way when they're in their 80s, and if you do,
especially if they've done their financial planning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so here's my rule of thumb. If you are maxing out your IRA, Roth IRA contributions, right? You're doing everything you can there. If you're over the limits and you're doing backdoor Roths or whatever you're doing, you're maxing out the 401k opportunities you have, right? You're doing all those things. You're already putting money away. You have a full topped off emergency reserve. You have, an additional reserve in like a brokerage account, and you're still trying to save a lot of money beyond that every year. That is where you might look to life insurance. If you're looking for something that is, and when I say life insurance, I mean using life insurance as some kind of investment vehicle.
Cash value life insurance policy.
What it ends up with is something that over time can provide some unique benefits. There's some unique features that can be useful in planning. And you're saying, hey, I want to do better than, just cash over time. But it's like, I'm really not a risky person, right? I'd rather save more and take less risk. Then that's where, that can come into play as like an option. But realize that it doesn't get the upward movement of the market with no risk. That's not how it works. There ain't no free lunches. Okay. I can tell you how the options are built on the backside of this. The insurance companies are still a business. They got to build in a spread for themselves. It is the least efficient way to run probably an indexing type idea in today's world. 10 years ago, that might not have been the case. Today, I think it certainly is. Anyways, but people call and they're getting recommendations. Again, cash out your 401k and buy life insurance with it. Horrible, horrible, horrible idea.
Yeah.
Almost always. I cannot imagine actually I can't imagine any scenario in which it's a good idea to cash out a retirement account to buy life insurance, right? If somebody's got one, message us. I'd love to hear it.
I mean, I want to make sure that people listening understand that life insurance is not bad. We're not opposed to life insurance. The issue and the red flags that we want to bring up here and have people contact us about for sure are the sales practices around it, and making sure that it's suitable for you, and that not even just suitable, but that it really does meet your needs, and it's helping like complete your financial plan, right? Like
what are the alternatives? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, is somebody talking to you about what the other options are?
Yes.
Is somebody talking to you about what goes wrong with this? Is somebody explaining to you that if you abandon ship on this plan in the first 10 to 12 years, you likely actually do lose money? Or are they just telling you that it's safe and you can't lose money?
Yeah.
Because that's not.
If it sounds too good to be true,
it usually is.
It probably is.
So, listen. So people come in because they want a second opinion on something that involves a financial product or service, right? Hey, do you think I really should be getting this asset protection program or this annuity or this life insurance, or should I be signing up for this benefit at work? Or, is this, I'm looking at, I've had people call and say, hey, I'm buying a new car. I'm down at like the credit union right now getting the loan. And, they're saying there's a thing where I can like buy this insurance, and if I get, fired from work, then, I can I don't have to make my car payment and stuff. Like, is that a good insurance to buy? And I'm like, listen, let's talk about the situation really quick. Yeah. Right. Like, so anytime you're getting like the opportunity to purchase, deny, enroll in a financial product, service, whatever it is, like, hey, our phones are open.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I do want to say that, like, with any type of financial product, it really comes down to what is your unique situation
Yep.
and what are you hoping to get out of this product? What are the alternatives? And so I think just keep that in mind whenever you are being approached or proposed to with a certain product. Like, make sure that you know the alternatives, make sure that you understand that there are pros and cons, and that somebody is talking through that with you in your own specific situation, not just in general terms. Because I think that's really where, like, that specialty comes in. And so when somebody comes in and asks us, we're not just going to say yes or no based on the product, right? It's okay. Let's talk through this. Like, you know, why are you looking at this? Like, what are you hoping that it's going to do for you? You know, how
could it go wrong?
Right? Like, what are the benefits? What are the cons? You know, like, let's make sure that you fully understand so you can make an educated decision, right? We're not pushing somebody to say yes or no, or to do this other product or something, right?
Yeah.
It's not saying, oh, you know, don't use this product, but we have a product here for you. Like, that's not what we're doing. We want to help make sure that you understand your options, know what that looks like, and be able to make a confident, educated decision for yourself.
I've had plenty of times where people have called and said, "Hey, I'm working with someone, and I'm looking at this insurance policy, or, you know, I'm looking to buy this rental property, whatever. Is this am I doing something wrong here? You know?" And I look at it with them, and we talk through it, and I'm like, "No, go for it." You know, I didn't. You know, and sometimes if it's a lengthier question, right? You know, I might say, "Hey, that's a really extensive, you need some real analysis on this. You know, you might have to pay me for a couple hours of my time or something." And sometimes it's pretty quick and easy. And I'm just, hey, yeah, you know, like, or if I already know them and I know a lot of the circumstances, right? And it's quick and easy. But you know, I don't it's never like the second opinion thing isn't about, no, don't do that. You know, come do this, you know, buy it with us, or, you know what I mean? Or whatever, right? It's like, we get paid on advice, you know, it's like, and so, if it's a good, you know what I mean? We have an obligation to give you advice in your best interest. And so if it's in your best interest to move forward with what you're looking at doing, we are happy to do that. And we want to see people succeed. That is our primary thing that, drives us at Ducharme Wealth Management, is like, we love seeing people succeed.
It gives us that joy.
And and we have an appreciation. You know, one of the things that I really like about our culture is that we have an appreciation that finance is personal and behavior matters and emotions matter, right? And so there is, you know, like, you can financially engineer something and have it look great on a spreadsheet and have it be a disaster in real life, right? Like, you have to account for the human side of things. And so sometimes, like, you know, it's like the question when somebody's like, "Oh, what, you know, like, where should somebody be investing right now?" I'm like, you are so much different than literally everyone else in this world.
We can't just make a blanket statement.
Yeah. And so, like, there's generally decent ideas out there, but sometimes, like, I always use, like, my grandpa as an example, primarily because he's, you know, passed away at this point. So I can just say whatever I want about him. But
I've only heard good things.
Yeah. Well, I'm just like, I don't have to abide by any, you know, client confidentiality here, you know. Okay. He was my own grandpa. His thing, we always say he was a great investor. The thing that made him a great investor is he realized what worked for him and he was able to stick with it.
He was consistent.
Right. And he was consistent. And so, like, I share this with people all the time. You know, my grandpa was like a big utility investor.
Yeah.
You know, that was his core allocations. He didn't like bonds. And he bought a lot of utility stocks, and he wasn't a wildly, you know, complicated guy doing deep analysis on these, you know, utility companies and stuff. And this was back when you didn't have ETFs that were just owed a bunch of utility companies. Like, you know, you had to pick which utility companies he's going to buy. And he's like, they got to have it. It's got to be a good price. They can't, you know, it's really hard to manipulate the accounting on it. So it's really hard for there to be fraud. It's regulated by the government. and people like have to buy it.
Yeah.
So
something he could feel comfortable and confident in his decision in.
And so in the ups and downs of it all, he's like, could sleep at night saying like, whatever. It's like, okay, the valuation on paper. So when I check my account statement, it's down, but they got to buy it. So the dividends should keep coming in, like, is that optimal? Probably not. Did he do great for himself over time? Yeah. But the reason he did great was because he found something that, worked for him, that aligned with his, behaviors, emotions, and that sort of thing. And so that goes back to the financial principle, like the thing that, works the best is the thing you can stick with the longest sort of deal. Which is just an adage, not a science, but, sometimes we have to sit down with people and just, you got to say like, do you understand what this is?
Yeah.
And if people don't understand, like you got to help them get something that they can understand.
At least you don't have, we're not saying you have to understand all of the technical information or, every little thing that we're doing or how every product works, but you should have a base understanding of what you are invested in and what you're doing.
Yeah. Like I'll use structured notes as an example really quick here. Structured notes are an interesting product. They've gotten a lot of traction in the last couple of years. We can write them for people. We can custom design them. I can work with the large banks to actually custom design a structured note depending on like the client's needs and inputs. The problem is if you don't have the desire to like sit down and understand how that works and what that experience is going to look and feel like while you own it, what your risk opportunity is on that, right? What your return potential is, like really how that plays out. It's a rather complex product.
Yep.
And it's probably not a good fit for you because at the end of the day, like when things go a little wrong, it's going to be more difficult to understand and be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right. And, so there's all kinds of structured notes, but if you are in a position where you're like, I don't have that kind of time to, like learn about that or have any understanding. Or I don't
have the desire to have things be overcomplicated. Like,
yeah. Then that might not be the right fit for you, and, sometimes like for some people, there's a lot of value in just keeping it simple, and sometimes what you do is you keep the core simple. So the majority of stuff, right? And you might do some exotic stuff around the edges. Whether it's
rounding out that
real estate investments, private investments, buying a couple single name companies or whatever, right? Like I tell people,
limited options really.
Yeah. When grandpa passed away, we had to redeem his paper shares in IBM, so that worked out well. Also, he lost money in Enron, so didn't really affect him either way because again, that was just stuff sort of around the edges that he, explored with.
Yeah.
And he had a core plan. And so look, my point in the whole thing is everyone's so different.
Yes.
And what you find is a lot of people can have the same core idea. But every once in a while, the people just got to have, sort of something different, custom tailored that they can look at and understand. And life insurance is no different. Okay. If there's a life insurance or somebody's selling you a product, service, whatever, that you just don't like, you can't fathom how the heck it works. Like you're like, I'm just going to sign up and they showed me some table that says I'm going to be a millionaire in a couple of years. Like I can promise you that the statistical likelihood of it being anything but the results on the paper are super, super, super high. Yeah. And so just get a second opinion from somebody that has a legal obligation to tell you the truth and lay it out, the good and the bad, and give you some actual advice. Right.
Yeah. I think that kind of is, really what it all boils down to is what people are looking for is advice, whether that is, going back to the beginning, those life events, marriage, divorce, death, like what do I do now, right? Or how do I prepare for this next step? Or, these changes are happening. If it's those tax frustrations, what are my options? Is there anything different I can do? Or am I just, doing the best that I can, right?
Yeah.
The organization consolidation, obviously they're doing something, but looking for advice on how to do it better, how to organize, how to restructure, how to maybe do things in the best way. And so I think that's really what it comes down to, is why you should meet with an advisor is because you want advice. You want a plan. You want a professional who is really going to help you understand your options and create a good, solid plan going forward that's custom and tailored for you.
Yeah. I think the how-tos line up with the last thing that's on my mind, which is the how muches.
Yes, that's a big one, actually.
How much do I need for retirement? How much can I take for income? How much could I spend? How much do I need to have in emergency savings? How much should I be putting in my, IRA or 401k? How much should I be setting aside? How much should I, put in this insurance product, or, how much should I be Roth converting, or whatever it is, right? Like the how much question becomes pretty big. And I think it's one of the most important components of the whole planning process, but it's only it can only be answered post organization.
Yes. You've got to lay out what you have, figure out where you are to figure out where you want to be. And I think that you look at that with any sort of planning, if you want to travel somewhere, you got to know where you are first to get somewhere else and, to get to that destination. And then there's the tweaking along the way to make things the best.
Well, you can go so here, retirement planning is a lot like planning a vacation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can do it one of two ways. You can say, I have $5,000. Where can I go on vacation? Right. You can say, I got X amount of money available. How long can I say, how long much can I, spend in retirement or, how long can I live? How long can I live without running out of money? Right. This is what I got. How can we make it work? That's option A. Typically a very, very uncomfortable option, realistically, right?
Yeah.
Because what you find is, I have $500, where can I go on vacation? And the answer is the old rickety motel down in Mesquite for one night. That's, if that's your idea of the retirement, then, that's typically
great.
That's how it, the other option is to say, hey, I've got this idea that I want to do a European cruise, and what we think it's going to take is, $18,500. And so now it's, how do we get the $18,500? Right? How do we make sure that that's available to do that?
And does that actually provide enough for me to do these excursions or whatever that I'm wanting to do on the trip?
Yeah,
am I calculating this correctly?
Right. And that leads to potentially some uncomfortable conversations, which is, hey, you can try to take more risk and do it and pull it off. However, with that risk comes the option that you don't make it at all. And you never go on the vacation, right? You lose all the vacation money, right? Or the vacation money doesn't grow because risk doesn't mean return. Risk means the potential for a return, right?
Yep.
And the other conversation is to say, look, you might not be okay with the risk. So here's what you would need to start putting away and save to make that vacation happen. And sometimes that people just look at that number and say, I can't save that much. And that's when you have to have that uncomfortable conversation and say, you can't.
Expectations are meeting reality.
Yep. 1 + 2 has to equal 3. If we change, we got to change the outcome. So, maybe what are some alternatives to doing that big, cruise through the Nordic countries or something? It's like, how about, what if you do not a 3-month cruise? What if you do a 1-week cruise? Or, what if we shorten the time? Or what if we change the cruise to a different cruise that's, sail out of a closer port or something,
I think that brings up a good point that I've actually been seeing a lot recently and having conversations around is a lot of people have these ideas that are so rigid that they forget that you can compromise and that there can be a middle ground that you're actually still going to be really happy with that is reasonable and it's attainable.
Well, I am not somebody that's big on compromising that way. Like anyone that knows me knows big dreams, big visions, I think big all the time, very motivated and driven, in my own unique way. Mm-hmm. And so I don't like telling people like, hey, you should compromise. Right. But I am okay saying like, you have to make it happen somehow. Right. Like,
right. But I think the idea is like, if they're thinking this is what I want, but I know that I'm never going to get there because we've gone through the steps of this is what you'd have to do. I'm
happy to help. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm happy to help somebody say, here's what you have to do to get there. Uh-huh. But what you have to do to get there might be very, very, very uncomfortable, and you might not want to do it. Right. Like you might not want to be in your 40s and get a second job.
Right.
Right. That might be the answer if you want that outcome. Mm-hmm. It's not my job to make you feel good. It's my job to tell you the right answer, tell you the information and give you the guidance, give you the advice, help you understand the options, help you understand the implications of decisions. Mm-hmm. It's not my job to say, you should feel good about getting a second job, or you should feel good, not ever retiring, or you should feel good, just working part-time, forever, or you should feel like I'm not here to, that's how I roll. Some advisors might be different, right? Yeah. I'm not a feel good person. I'm like a very analytical person. Where I just say like, look, it's the hard truth, you know?
Which but I think there's a lot of value in that.
If you stare the hard truth in the face, you can deal with the situation, right? That's my personal approach. And sometimes that's why I say you're a great complementary asset, because you are a little bit more tender around that stuff than I am.
Yeah. But I mean, I love that though, because I think that's the initial process too of like, okay, you have to, if this is what the client wants, okay, these are the steps and these are the options for you to get there.
Yeah.
And if they're like, yeah, that's not happening, then okay, what's something else that you can be happy with that now we can work towards, right? Like there doesn't have to be this or nothing, right? Yeah. Like it's totally not true. All or bust. Like you can still have a good retirement, but it's setting those expectations and that reality to have that alignment. In that understanding. And I think that's that core piece.
Sometimes it's a negotiation with yourself.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And it
sometimes
all
your
comes
spouse,
down to the client too.
Mostly.
Of like, what are you really willing to do to make this reality? Right. And that's not something we can do for you. We can tell you, what you'd have to do. And then it's up to you to make it happen from there.
Yeah. Sometimes like life is just hard.
Yeah.
And whatever, but getting organized and having the clarity to make good decisions is, I think, super impactful. And that's really, that's what people, if I had to sum up the whole episode, people reach out when they're at a point in life where they want some clarity on something.
Yes.
And they need somebody that they can call that, they can trust to have their best interests at heart, be honest with them, be transparent with them, deliver the hard news if it needs to be delivered. Mm-hmm. And just be fair with people. And so when you're at those crossroads in life where you're feeling like you're confused about your situation, you don't have that clarity, you've got the stress going on at night because you don't know when you can retire, you don't know what's going on.
Or even
have
if you
concerns
think you're
about
all right,
a life
but
change
you just are
or
not
whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like when you have that uncertainty, that's the thing that should cue up. It's time to reach out, whether it's to us or reach out to, advisor you already work with and just say, I got to check in again, or, call, an advisor that's local in your area, whatever it is. But find somebody that's a registered investment advisor, and get some good advice.
Yep.
Advice is advice. It's not always guaranteed to be, turn out the best. It's just, you're looking for prudence, right? And you're looking for, what am I missing? What am I not considering? You got to bounce those ideas off people.
Yeah.
But people that understand what they're talking about.
Yep.
So, cool. Well, that's a great riff. I'll drop, hey, we have, by the time this comes out, if you are one of our listeners and you're local in the St. George area, we're going to be hosting a workshop at our office in June, to just teach people how to set up their own retirement plans.
Yep. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah. No sales pitch, no product discussion,
Strictly
no
educational.
Yep. It's like avoid the steak dinner and, whatever the fancy, whatever. We're not scaring people into anything here. It's like, come prepared. We'll be sending out to the people that RSVP, we'll be sending out ahead of time. Like, here's a list of things that you should do to prepare for this and prepare to get some work done. Right. Like, it's educational, but it's going to be workshop style. So you leave with, some good framework on how to go build your plan. And you should have a fair chunk of it kind of underway already. So we like equipping people with knowledge, and, one of my favorite quotes always is teach them correct principles, let them govern themselves. And we're going to try to, support that philosophy by hosting a workshop. So if you're interested in that, make sure to just ping us. We'll make sure you get an invite and all that kind of stuff. If you're virtual, if you're a distant listener, I know there's a number of you out there, and you want something like that, but maybe we just do it on like a Zoom call or something like that, let me know, and we can look at hosting something that way as well if there's a demand for it. So all else being equal, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. See you out there.